The bombshell announcement came via Twitter, stunning the world. Amazon's chief executive officer Jeff Bezos and his wife MacKenzie were calling it quits. Their joint statement spoke of a thoughtful journey, mentioning a long period of loving exploration and trial separation before making the decision to divorce, vowing to continue their shared lives as friends. From the outside looking in, MacKenzie Scott, the profoundly influential philanthropist who was then the wife of Amazon visionary Jeff Bezos, appeared to be living a fairy tale life. She had a seemingly unbreakable marriage, a loving family with 4 children, and a front row seat to history, standing beside one of the planet's most formidable men. However, beneath the gleaming surface of immense fortune, widespread public acclaim, and an image of perfect stability, the foundation of their relationship had been slowly eroding for years. After a quarter-century of marriage, MacKenzie's decision to divorce Jeff sent a tremor through both the financial and social worlds. From an expanding emotional chasm and a fading sense of self to a life courageously reclaimed, what was the authentic reason she finally walked away? And how did that one choice reshape her future forever? It was the celebrity split that nearly everyone fundamentally misunderstood. When MacKenzie Scott and Jeff Bezos revealed their impending divorce in January of 2019, the public assumed it had the entire story figured out instantly. The headlines screamed with predictable narratives: a fabulously wealthy husband, a glamorous new lover, a shocking public scandal, and a partnership that appeared to have imploded overnight. At first glance, it seemed to be a timeless story of immense riches, human temptation, and ultimate betrayal. The public connected the dots with lightning speed, settling on a narrative that was neat, straightforward, and felt almost scripted. It was a drama the tabloids couldn't wait to splash across their pages. Yet there was a single inconvenient fact that didn't align with this simple story. Their decision to separate was announced before the explosive story involving Lauren Sanchez ever hit the newsstands, not as a reaction to it. To put it plainly, MacKenzie had already chosen to end her marriage well before the public was even aware of a scandal. This timeline is absolutely critical to understanding what really happened. This sequence of events strongly indicates that the divorce wasn't an impulsive, knee-jerk response to one specific incident. It wasn't just about an affair that suddenly blew the lid off their marital problems. On the contrary, it hints at something much deeper and more complex. Their partnership had quietly concluded on its own terms, far from the public eye, in a manner no outsider could have possibly perceived. The breakup wasn't caused by the scandal. The scandal merely served as public confirmation of a private reality that had existed for quite some time. In the aftermath, MacKenzie notably refrained from using cameras or social media platforms as a stage to lash out at Jeff or to publicly plead her case. There were no bitter public arguments, no strategically leaked personal letters, and absolutely no melodramatic press statements from her camp. You won't find a single headline chronicling her rage, nor any tell-all interviews where she meticulously dissected the intimate details of their shared life. Instead, her public response was one of profound, quiet composure and an almost complete withdrawal from the spotlight. However, if you observe her actions in the years that followed, a clear pattern begins to take shape. Each decision she made, every action she took, and every monumental philanthropic donation became her unspoken explanation. It was her powerful way of revealing to the world her true character and the principles she held dear. The affair, for all its sensational headlines, was not what ended their marriage. It simply wasn't the final straw or the dramatic breaking point that so much of the media coverage portrayed it to be. It was the loud validation of a quiet truth that had been present for a long time. By the moment the story broke publicly, MacKenzie had already made her peace with the decision. She had already embarked on the personal journey of reclaiming her own identity and narrative. And she was already confidently stepping onto a new path defined by her own independence and a powerful sense of purpose. To genuinely grasp why MacKenzie left, why the public witnessed such a remarkably calm and graceful woman separating from one of the globe's most influential figures, you must venture far beyond the tabloid headlines. It requires looking back at the person she was long before unimaginable wealth, worldwide fame, and public scandal ever entered her life. Only then can you begin to understand the quiet strength, the foresight and the profound clarity that empowered her to make a choice immune to the pressures of public opinion or tabloid fury. The divorce of MacKenzie and Jeff ignited a firestorm of endless speculation regarding the true motivations behind their separation. But to really understand, we must ask, who was MacKenzie before Jeff Bezos entered the picture? Is it possible that her upbringing shaped the very path that eventually led them apart? Furthermore, what significant personal sacrifices did she make for the sake of his ambitions? It's time to delve into the untold details. Her identity was forged long before the marriage, before anyone knew her as Mrs. Jeff Bezos. MacKenzie Scott was already a focused young woman, driven by clear ambitions and a strong inner compass. Born and raised in San Francisco, her idyllic childhood was disrupted when her family encountered devastating financial hardships during her teenage years. Her father's company had completely collapsed, leaving the family in a desperate struggle to hold on to the comfortable lifestyle they had once known. This period of adversity instilled in MacKenzie a powerful sense of responsibility from a young age, teaching her the vital importance of hard work and self-reliance. Rather than retreat from these daunting obstacles, she confronted them directly and with an unwavering resolve. Showcasing a remarkable blend of sharp intellect and fierce determination, she managed to graduate from her prestigious Connecticut boarding school a full year ahead of schedule. She then went on to work multiple jobs to put herself through Princeton University, paying her own way while chasing her academic dreams. And once on campus, it was clear she was not an average student. At Princeton, she had the rare opportunity to study directly under the guidance of the legendary Nobel Prize-winning novelist Toni Morrison, an experience that would profoundly shape her life. In fact, Morrison herself would later praise MacKenzie as a truly exceptional writer, remarking on a level of talent and unwavering dedication that was simply impossible to ignore. For MacKenzie, writing wasn't merely a casual hobby or a pleasant diversion, it was her calling. It was the very core of the future she had always imagined for herself. It was the specific life path she had been dreaming of following ever since she was just a 6-year-old girl. Every single page she ever wrote and each lesson she meticulously learned was a deliberate brick laid in the foundation of the life she was building for herself. This carefully constructed blueprint is absolutely essential to truly grasping the woman she would later become. When MacKenzie first crossed paths with Jeff Bezos, she wasn't on a quest for fame, a grab for influence, or a shortcut to financial stability. She arrived with a fully formed identity, a powerful set of ambitions, and a very clear compass guiding her way. Her existence was already being shaped by her own deeply held principles and decisive choices. For her, getting married wasn't an exercise in finding her identity within someone else's shadow. It was a conscious decision to select a companion who could walk alongside her on the journey she had already begun. She possessed a rare combination of personal discipline, a voracious intellectual curiosity, and a fiercely independent vision for what her future would hold. It's because of this inherent strength that the narrative of her marriage is far more nuanced and intricate than a surface-level glance might suggest. The significant transformations in her later years, the retreat from the public eye, the monumental decision to separate, and her astonishing philanthropic endeavours were not simply knee-jerk reactions to changing circumstances or a messy scandal. They were all manifestations of a much deeper evolution, a steady and intentional process of reclaiming the powerful self she had nurtured long before she ever took on the title of Mrs. Bezos. The profound shifts within her marriage were never solely about the dynamics of a relationship. Instead, they signalled a slow, calculated pivot away from a life that had ceased to align with the core identity of the woman she was always meant to be. Truly understanding the MacKenzie that existed before the marriage allows us to interpret her subsequent choices through an entirely new and more revealing lens. Her remarkable independence, her keen foresight, and her unwavering integrity were all deeply ingrained in her character long before the tabloid headlines, the unimaginable wealth, or the public spectacle. These qualities are the very threads that intricately weave together the story of a woman who never lost sight of herself. even as life's currents pulled her in directions she could have never anticipated. MacKenzie came to the table with a crystal clear vision for her life and a well-defined set of goals long before Jeff entered the picture. So what were the unique circumstances that drew these two ambitious people together? Was the spark between them immediate and mutual? And was Jeff already the titan of industry we know today? Or were they both just two relative unknowns still finding their place in the world? Let's now dive into the moment that ignited it all, the beginning of a marriage founded on a genuine sense of partnership. MacKenzie Scott's entire life trajectory was forever altered the day she first heard Jeff Bezos' distinctive laugh booming through the office walls at D.E. Shaw, the high-powered New York investment firm where she was just starting out her post-college career. The sound of that laugh was impossible to ignore. It was vibrant, packed with energy, brimming with confidence, and possessed an undeniable magnetic pull. It immediately ignited a powerful spark of curiosity within her. While most people might have played it safe, waiting for a chance encounter, MacKenzie was wired differently. In a move that showcased her inherent confidence, she boldly requested that Jeff be the one to interview her, determined to get to know the man behind that captivating laugh. That one decisive act of pure initiative would spark a partnership that would go on to fundamentally reshape modern commerce and culture. Even following their initial meeting, MacKenzie consistently defied the conventions of the time. It was she who made the next move, confidently asking Jeff out for a lunch date. In a period where societal norms almost always expected men to take the lead in courtship, her self-assurance and directness were a powerful testament to her character. Their bond almost instantly proved to be far deeper than just a simple physical attraction. It was a meeting of the minds intellectual, witty, and profoundly compatible. They were both analytical thinkers and curious souls who revelled in exploring new ideas and questioning every assumption. Each recognised in the other a counterpart who could match their own relentless pace and ambition, someone with whom building a life would feel like a natural collaboration. In a remarkable whirlwind romance, they were engaged within just 3 short months. And by the 6-month mark, they were officially husband and wife. This was not a marriage of strategic convenience, a calculated move, or one based on the promise of future riches. Back then, the concept of Amazon was still just a dream, and Jeff was not the globally recognised icon he is today. There were no flashing cameras from the press, no public pressure, and certainly no vast fortune to define their union's value. What they did have was a powerful and authentic connection, one built firmly on a foundation of shared values, profound mutual respect, and a vision for the future that seamlessly aligned. Right from the very beginning, their relationship was the definition of a true partnership in every sense of the word. They championed each other's wild ideas, celebrated every success as a team, and worked side by side to explore all of life's incredible possibilities. It is this strong foundation that explains why the eventual unravelling of their marriage wasn't a sudden dramatic implosion. It didn't erupt from a single explosive argument or a shocking act of betrayal. Instead, it was a slow, quiet evolution that took place over many years, moulded by ever-changing priorities, expanding ambitions, and the immense unimaginable pressures that come with unprecedented global success. Grasping the dynamics of MacKenzie and Jeff's early partnership is absolutely critical. It clearly demonstrates that their union was never shallow or a mere transaction of convenience for status or wealth. It was a legitimate intellectual and emotional bond that was fueled by a sense of equality and mutual inspiration. And because it started from such a place of genuine compatibility, the challenges that arose later, the growing distance, the shifting power dynamics, and the ultimate painful decision to go their separate ways carry an even greater significance. The deep love and perfect alignment they once shared makes the story of their eventual separation not just another celebrity scandal, but a poignant tale about the quiet evolution of two people whose paths, once perfectly parallel, slowly and irrevocably diverged over time. The connection between MacKenzie and Jeff was clearly a powerful meeting of minds. But even though MacKenzie made that first courageous move, what was her actual role in the creation of Amazon, the very company that would ultimately make Jeff the wealthiest man on the planet? Now let's pull back the curtain on how MacKenzie Scott became Amazon's very first employee and the indispensable heart of a true partnership that built an empire from the ground up. Back in 1994, a young couple named MacKenzie Scott and Jeff Bezos made a pivotal gamble that would forever alter the course of their lives. They left the chaotic energy of New York City behind, packing their entire lives into a modest car for an ambitious cross-country trek to Seattle. Jeff was driven by an audacious concept, creating an online bookstore that held the potential to evolve into something monumentally larger. MacKenzie wasn't merely offering moral support from the sidelines, she was a committed co-architect of this dream, ready to dive in and build it from the ground up. This was the humble genesis of Amazon. At the time, however, it was simply a speculative idea, a massive risk, and a cramped apartment in a brand new city. MacKenzie didn't assume a ceremonial position as the founder's wife. She officially became Amazon's very first employee, tackling every conceivable task to ensure the fledgling company survived. She meticulously managed the finances, personally packed and shipped the books-handled customer inquiries, and skillfully negotiated the foundational contracts that paved the way for future expansion. Every single success, each small step forward, was born from the direct hands-on labour of both of them working in tandem. For the couple, their personal lives and their work were completely and inextricably woven together. The distinction between professional ambition and family life vanished, as did the line between their grand dreams and the mundane tasks of daily existence. They didn't just share a common vision, they equally shouldered the immense responsibility of transforming that vision into reality. Even while grappling with the relentless demands of launching a business from nothing, they fiercely protected the deep personal connections that truly mattered. Jeff would dedicate time to reading MacKenzie's novel manuscripts, providing her with thoughtful feedback and unwavering encouragement for the creative work she was so passionate about. They safeguarded their family time, cherishing their shared breakfasts and the small quiet moments that reminded them of their identities beyond the burgeoning company. In those formative years, their existence was a delicate balancing act between intense professional drive and deep personal care, a balance that both partners worked equally hard to maintain. Eventually, as their family began to grow, MacKenzie made the conscious and significant choice to set aside her own writing career to concentrate on raising their children. She was determined to be a present parent, to provide them with the nurturing and focused attention she deeply valued, even if it meant her own ambitions had to be temporarily sidelined. This decision was a powerful reflection of her core priorities and her character as an individual deeply committed to both her family and her partnership. During that period, success was not yet defined by billions of dollars or sensational media headlines. Instead, it was measured by sheer effort, dedicated teamwork, and the joy of their shared accomplishments. Amazon was far from being a global empire. It was a scrappy little startup that was fueled by the intense hard work and profound dedication of two people who believed passionately in the same dream. Their marriage was the epitome of a true partnership, with each of them contributing unique skills that perfectly complemented the others. Both were completely invested in the outcome, both carried the heavy weight of responsibility, and both revelled in every victory, whether monumental or minor. These early years reveal a compelling side of MacKenzie Scott that is too easily glossed over in today's sensational headlines. She was never merely the spouse of a man who would become a billionaire. She was a fundamental driving force in the creation of something truly massive, a partner, in the most authentic sense, who navigated ambition, love and family with remarkable grace and fierce determination. It was an era when their lives and aspirations were completely intertwined, as the foundation for both a corporate empire and a shared life was meticulously constructed, one deliberate decision, one tireless effort, and one shared moment at a time. When Jeff first proposed his idea for Amazon, MacKenzie didn't just offer her support, she became the operational backbone of its success, frequently sacrificing her own creative ambitions in the process. But the looming question remained: how long could their relationship endure the immense pressures of staggering wealth and global fame before the strain became too much to bear? Was it possible for Jeff to navigate the blinding glare of the spotlight without inadvertently diminishing the immense value of their foundational partnership? Let's explore what happened when overwhelming success began to irrevocably alter the balance of their lives. As Amazon morphed from a small online bookshop into a colossal corporation that shaped millions of lives, Jeff Bezos' world began to expand at a rate few people could ever comprehend. The man who had once spent his days on a cross-country road trip with MacKenzie, a laptop on his knee, was suddenly catapulted onto the global stage. His new normal became a relentless cycle of high-stakes interviews, constant media appearances, and critical business meetings that held immense consequences. His every action was intensely scrutinised. Headlines seemed to follow his every move. Cameras were a constant presence in his life. And while Jeff's life became increasingly centred on public attention and colossal ambitions such as the audacious launch of his space exploration company, Blue Origin Mackenzie's world was quietly shifting in an entirely different direction. Her existence became more and more focused on the private sanctuary of the home they had built together over the years. The ever-present duties of family, the challenge of raising their children, and the need to cultivate a personal life away from the expanding empire demanded all of her attention. While Jeff's ambitions propelled him outward toward public acclaim, outer space, and international commerce, Mackenzie's focus turned inward toward the people she loved and the quiet life she was determined to preserve. The stark and growing contrast between their separate worlds was not a sudden development that occurred overnight. It was a subtle and incremental drift creeping into their lives through minor changes that were completely invisible to the public eye. There was no single explosive argument or a sudden dramatic fracture that split them apart in an instant. Instead, it was the slow, almost imperceptible erosion of the connection that had once been their bedrock. Conversations that once spanned hours filled with depth and intimacy were now reduced to just a few fleeting minutes. Shared meals, which had always been vibrant occasions filled with laughter and meaningful discussion, gradually became quiet, perfunctory routines. What was once a life of spontaneous connection and true partnership devolved into a series of carefully managed appointments. A quick breakfast meeting on the calendar, a fleeting check-in between calls. The effortless joy of just sharing a room, of simply coexisting in the same space without an agenda, began to noticeably fade away. This was a profound internal shift, a change so subtle that no one on the outside could have possibly detected it. To the public eye, their world seemed perfectly preserved. Their marriage was viewed as a resounding success. Their family life looked like a flawless portrait, and the business empire continued to flourish without a single hint of trouble. However, behind the closed doors of their private life, the dynamic and collaborative bond that had been their foundation was silently disintegrating. So when the bombshell scandal involving Lauren Sanchez finally erupted into the public consciousness, the vast emotional chasm between Mackenzie and Jeff had already been widening for years. Their union didn't collapse due to one singular dramatic act of infidelity. It had been slowly and quietly coming apart at the seams, one thread at a time, in a way no flashy headline could ever truly convey. Mackenzie's journey reveals a profound truth about the nature of human connection. Profound change almost never occurs in an instant. More often, it accumulates gradually, fueled by diverging priorities, escalating ambitions, and the almost imperceptible erosion of a once solid bond. Her marriage to Jeff wasn't destroyed in a single sudden implosion. Instead, it underwent a slow metamorphosis, morphing from what was once an equal partnership into two separate individuals on increasingly divergent paths. This viewpoint helps explain why their 2019 divorce, while splashed across every tabloid in sensational fashion, wasn't the shocking and abrupt break it appeared to be. It was, in reality, the unavoidable conclusion to years of growing emotional distance, a period during which their individual journeys had silently veered in opposite directions. The monumental success of Amazon, a venture that theoretically should have fortified their bond, paradoxically carved an ever-widening canyon between them. But was it merely emotional distance that was to blame? Or did Jeff's skyrocketing celebrity status come with a devastating cost to his family life? Now we delve into the scandal that set the stage for the divorce, the affair that sealed its fate. In time, explosive reports began to surface, exposing Jeff Bezos' secret relationship with Lauren Sanchez, who at that point was still married to the powerful Hollywood talent agent Patrick Whitesell. The affair immediately became a global media firestorm. Shortly thereafter, a major tabloid got its hands on and published intimate text messages allegedly leaked by Lauren's own brother, Michael Sanchez. These private communications were deeply personal, emotionally charged, and plastered across news outlets worldwide. For most of the public, looking in this affair seemed to be the clear and definitive reason for the divorce. It had all the markings of a dramatic singular event that abruptly shattered a decades-long marriage. However, the actual timeline of events painted a much more complex picture. The announcement of their separation was made before those text messages were ever leaked, before the scandalous headlines broke, and before the affair became the topic of global gossip. That one crucial detail completely reframed the entire narrative. This fact strongly suggested that their decision to separate wasn't a knee-jerk reaction to being publicly humiliated. It wasn't a rash choice made under the intense pressure of exposure. On the contrary, it appeared to be the official confirmation of a decision that had been made privately long before anyone even knew the affair was happening. To put it another way, the scandal served to explain the breakup to the world, but it was not the root cause of the breakup itself. And MacKenzie Scott's public conduct following the news only served to reinforce this perception. She refrained from giving tearful tell-all interviews. She didn't engage in public spats. She never once hurled accusations, traded insults, or tried to manipulate the media narrative in her favour. There were no fiery public statements, nor were there any calculated plays for public sympathy. Her approach to the entire ordeal was remarkably calm, incredibly measured, and profoundly quiet. Instead of fanning the flames of the scandal, she simply let the media frenzy swirl around her. Her focus remained squarely on her family, and she maintained an unshakable composure even as the world's attention was fixed on her private life. The complete and total absence of any public display of anger was genuinely striking. It seemed less like the reaction of a person reeling from a shocking betrayal and more like someone who was calmly acknowledging a conclusion she had already reached on her own. Her demeanour strongly suggested that she had found her own sense of closure long before any official announcement was made. It seemed that by the time the story finally broke, the difficult emotional work was already done. The formal announcement, therefore, was merely making public a resolution that had already been settled between them in private. This understanding completely flipped the script on the entire story. It was no longer about a marriage that suddenly imploded due to a shocking revealed affair. But instead, it started to look like a partnership that had gently and quietly run its course some time before, with the ensuing scandal serving merely as the public evidence of the breakup, not the actual cause. It's a reminder that sometimes one dramatic event doesn't actually destroy a relationship. Sometimes it simply exposes the fact that the relationship had already deteriorated beyond any hope of repair. MacKenzie's unwavering and steady response created the powerful impression of a woman quietly turning the final page of a chapter rather than reacting to a sudden painful blow. The world perceived a dramatic revelation. For her, it seemed to be a simple confirmation of what she already knew. The news reports laid it all out. Jeff was involved in an affair with Lauren, a woman who was herself married at the time. So what specific actions did MacKenzie take in the aftermath of the divorce to reclaim her own identity and step away from what had become an unhealthy partnership? Did she leverage the divorce settlement to build her own power? Or did she make it clear that her primary focus was never about the enormous financial payout? Let's dive into that. This is the story of her transformation from billionaire to world-changing benefactor. Once the ink was dry on the divorce settlement, MacKenzie Scott was instantly catapulted into the ranks of the wealthiest women on the entire planet. Nearly everyone anticipated she would embrace a life defined by extravagant luxury, immense social influence, and the kind of public displays of wealth that come with that status. But what came next took nearly everyone by complete surprise. Instead of hoarding her massive fortune, she began distributing it with a speed and scale almost unheard of in the modern era. She made a public commitment to donate at least half of her wealth, and then she proceeded to do so with a velocity that outpaced even the wildest expectations. Over the following years, she gifted more than $26 billion to a staggering list of over 2,700 organisations. The sheer volume of her giving was in itself extraordinary, But the truly revolutionary part was the philosophy behind how she gave it away. Her financial gifts arrived without complex strings attached, no invasive oversight dictating how the funds should be utilised, and absolutely no demands for buildings to bear her name. She provided what are known as unrestricted grants, which empowered the organisations on the receiving end to determine the most effective way to use the capital. This unique approach demonstrated profound trust in the recipient's shifting power away from the donor, a stark departure from the traditional controlling methods often employed by the ultra-wealthy. A closer look at the causes she championed reveals very clear and intentional patterns. She poured millions into educational institutions, grassroots community initiatives, and fiercely independent journalism, while also supporting groups dedicated to amplifying the voices of those who are often marginalised and ignored. Among her most significant contributions were a monumental $560 million gift to historically black colleges and universities and an incredible $45 million donation to the Trevor Project in 2026. Every single grant seemed to reflect her intense focus on creating opportunity, giving a voice to the voiceless, and providing stability for communities that frequently operate on the fringes without adequate attention or security. Her personal life also underwent a quiet yet significant transformation. She had a brief marriage to a science teacher, Dan Jewett, and their eventual separation unfolded without any public drama or media spectacle. The split appeared to be handled calmly and privately, perfectly mirroring the understated nature of all her other choices after the divorce. When viewed as a whole, her actions pointed to something far deeper than simple generosity. They revealed a woman who was methodically and powerfully redefining what it meant to have control over her own destiny. Instead of searching for a sense of permanence through high-profile titles or relationships, she seemed to prioritise her own independence and a life filled with personal meaning. The immense fortune she had come into did not become a new symbol of her status, but rather a powerful tool she could wield and release as she saw fit. It never seemed as if she was just trying to distance herself from a single person. Instead, it looked as though she was fundamentally reshaping her existence on her own terms, following a path she alone was charting. After spending years as part of a famous shared identity, her actions giving away billions and deliberately stepping away from the limelight sent a clear and consistent message. It was a message about choice, about freedom, and ultimately about taking ownership of her own story. In that respect, her philanthropy wasn't just about helping other people. It was a profound declaration of her own autonomy, a powerful method for defining herself completely outside of public expectations and the chapter of life she had once shared. So rather than getting caught up in maximising her share from the divorce settlement, MacKenzie chose to walk a truly philanthropic path. But what about Jeff in the aftermath of the split? Did he take a similar route? Or did he double down on expanding his already vast empire? Now it's time to delve into those details. Two very different paths emerged from the end of one marriage. While MacKenzie Scott was systematically channeling her immense wealth into social progress and community aid, Jeff Bezos was embarking on a starkly different journey. His years following the divorce were characterised by highly public displays of extravagant success and a lavish lifestyle. Media reports were filled with his purchases of multiple ultra-high-value properties, which included sprawling residences in both Washington, D.C. and the exclusive Beverly Hills, a jaw-dropping luxury apartment with views of Central Park in Manhattan, and an enormous ranch in Texas that spanned hundreds of thousands of acres. Each of these major acquisitions served to reinforce his public image of relentless expansion ownership and monumental scale. His personal life also took a turn towards the glamorous and highly publicised. He and his partner, Lauren Sanchez, were frequently photographed travelling to famous sun-drenched resort destinations, making appearances at the most exclusive parties and becoming regular fixtures at high-profile social galas and events. The media coverage often fixated on personal details like his evolving fashion sense, luxurious vacations, and a dramatically changed physical appearance that became a viral topic online. All of these moments work together to construct a narrative of public celebration, personal reinvention, and a life of pure spectacle in the years after his marriage concluded. Simultaneously, his ongoing leadership at Amazon continued to attract significant criticism from labour advocates and various worker unions who passionately argued that the company's incredible efficiency was built on the backs of its employees. Heated debates surrounding warehouse working conditions and attempts at unionisation became an inescapable part of the larger conversation about his business practices and ultimate legacy. For many people, watching this sharp contrast perfectly illustrated the inherent tension between groundbreaking technological innovation and its real-world human cost. It was against this very backdrop that MacKenzie Scott's radically different approach began to stand out with even greater clarity. Instead of amplifying the visibility of her personal lifestyle, she actively worked to minimise it. In place of acquiring more and more symbols of elite status, she systematically reduced her attachment to them. Her burgeoning public reputation was built not on public display, but on quiet distribution. She gradually became known far less for the assets she possessed and much more for the wealth she was so willingly letting go of. Pundits and commentators soon began to hold her up as a new model for a different kind of philanthropy. Chuck Collins, a prominent researcher specialising in economic inequality, pointed out that her actions were establishing an entirely new benchmark for billionaires by proving that large-scale giving could happen without bureaucratic delays or excessive donor control. For her, the core emphasis was clearly not on legacy building through buildings or securing naming rights on university halls, but on fostering trust and creating immediate tangible change within local communities. This stark divergence in their approaches wasn't about one being right and the other wrong. Instead, it powerfully demonstrated how two people starting from the exact same place can develop vastly different, almost competing visions of what true success looks like. One philosophy was all about pushing boundaries, fueled by relentless ambition and an endless drive for outward expansion. The other, in profound contrast, focused inward on healing, creating opportunities and providing foundational support for the communities already around us. In the public eye, their separate journeys evolved into powerful symbols of two fundamentally different philosophies on the purpose of influence itself. It raised a critical question: should immense wealth be a tool for amplifying personal legacy and individual achievement, or should it be channeled into reinforcing the very fabric of society? By dedicating herself to the latter, MacKenzie Scott completely redefined public perception of what a massive fortune could be, transforming her vast resources from a symbol of personal status into an engine for the collective good. As she dedicated her life to systematically giving her fortune away to create change, Jeff was busy jet-setting across the globe with his new partner, Lauren Sanchez, and accumulating an impressive portfolio of luxury properties. But what were the far-reaching consequences of this monumental split? And more importantly, what profound lessons about love, partnership and purpose can be gleaned from their story? Let's dive deep and uncover the truth. In the aftermath of their divorce, as their lifelong partnership officially dissolved, Jeff Bezos redirected his immense energy and capital into colossal ventures designed to secure his technological legacy and propel humanity into the cosmos. His gaze shifted decisively outward, fixed on the distant horizons of space exploration, radical innovation, and moonshot projects that transcended the concerns of ordinary life on Earth. Towering rockets, globe-spanning enterprises, and bleeding-edge technologies became the pillars of his new world, painting the portrait of a man obsessed with visionary scale and a burning desire to leave an indelible, highly visible mark on history. His existence transformed into a spectacle of continuous expansion, intensely public, impossible to ignore, and wielding an undeniable planet-sized influence. Meanwhile, MacKenzie Scott chose a radically different journey. Her attention turned inward, focusing on the human scale, on individual people rather than abstract projects, on nurturing communities rather than building global empires. She wielded her newfound wealth and influence as a direct force for good, championing causes, dedicated to uplifting the voices of those who had been systematically overlooked, marginalised or left behind by society. Key battlegrounds like education reform, social justice movements, press freedom, and vital initiatives promoting racial and gender equity became the primary arenas for her transformative work, where her resources created real-world, tangible change. So, while Jeff was constructing massive systems that reached for the stars and dominated global commerce, MacKenzie was painstakingly building bridges between people, fostering human connection and empowerment right here on the ground. This glaring contrast between their post-divorce lives does more than just show their differences. It reveals a fundamental truth about why their marriage ultimately crumbled. The end didn't come because of a single extramarital affair, nor was it just about the salacious public scandal that the media devoured for weeks. Those explosive events were merely the tip of the iceberg, the dramatic moment the public finally glimpsed a painful reality that had been festering behind closed doors for years. Their marriage had been quietly eroding for years, with the core elements of intimacy, genuine partnership, and a unified sense of purpose slowly dissolving away. Their two lives, once so deeply intertwined they were inseparable, had gradually and almost imperceptibly drifted apart. The small, essential rituals of a shared life, the daily check-ins, the unwavering mutual support, the comfortable routines, and the excitement of common goals became distant memories replaced by a growing silence. That powerful bond, forged over decades of late-night brainstorming sessions, collaborative ventures, and deep emotional support, grew thin and brittle, eventually snapping to leave two people living parallel lives under the same roof. So by the time the rest of the world was reacting to the shock of the scandal, the emotional divorce, the true separation, had already been a quiet reality for a very long time. For MacKenzie, the public revelation wasn't a bombshell. It was simply a painful confirmation of a truth she had been grappling with privately for years. Her ultimate decision to walk away was anything but a knee-jerk reaction to the sting of betrayal or the humiliation of public exposure. It was the final heartbreaking culmination of a long and excruciating internal journey. The slow, dawning recognition that the shared life they had poured everything into simply did not exist anymore. Their partnership had silently crumbled from within, leaving two individuals on separate tracks moving alongside each other, but no longer heading to the same destination. And that reveals a difficult truth. Sometimes the most devastating discovery isn't infidelity. The most soul-crushing realization is looking around and understanding that the entire world you so carefully constructed with someone has vanished into thin air. The foundation that once connected you has completely eroded, and in truth, it has been gone for a very long time. MacKenzie Scott's decision to leave, therefore, was a profound and deliberate act of reclaiming her own autonomy and redefining her own purpose. She didn't walk out of the door fueled by rage or a desire for revenge. She left because she arrived at the powerful conclusion that she had to build a life that was in true alignment with her core values, her personal identity, and her immense capacity to make a meaningful impact on the world. Her departure wasn't about punishing him for the past. It was about reclaiming herself and finding the courage to step forward into a future she could call her own. So what is your take on the real reasons MacKenzie decided to leave Jeff Bezos? Do you think she could have found a way to stay, or was walking away her only path to a genuine future? We are really interested to hear what you think, so drop your thoughts in the comments section below.